Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Federal Agency Update session. Before we start, we're going to go through a couple of Zoom webinar reminders. So if you experience any technical issues, please call 1-888-799-9666 and choose option 2. Your audio will be streamed through your speakers. Please submit questions at any time in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And this session will be recorded, and that recording, along with the slides and session summaries, will be posted on our website, thefdp.org. And I'm going to pass it off to Michelle to introduce the session.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are around the country. It's great to see everyone. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Federal Agency Update session here, along with Alex Albanak and Maria Kozalka. We will be moderating the session and going through all of our federal updates. Can you show us the agenda, Sarah? Thank you. So just so that you're familiar with the order in which we're going to go through presentations, we'll begin in a moment with Gene Feldman from NSF. We have Calvin Scott from AFOSR. We have Michael Pellegrino from DHS. We have Brian Sast-Hurst from NIH. We have Susan Rice from NIFA. We have Mary Sladek and Christiane Diallo from NASA. Jennifer Robbins from EPA, and we're hopeful that Jennifer Riggle from HRSA HRSA will be able to join us. So we have a lot to cover, and we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to turn this over to Gene Feldman to kick us off. Gene.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Well, hello, everyone. Another hello from me personally. It's time for another NSF update presentation at the FDP. I look forward to talking with you about some exciting changes to our proposal and award policies and procedures. Next slide, please. Again, my name is Gene Feldman. I'm head of the policy office in the Division of Institution and Award Support. That's part of the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management at NSF. The policy office is responsible for the development, issuance, and maintenance of internal policies and procedures for the assistance programs of NSF. So next slide, please. So what am I going to cover this afternoon or this morning? I am very excited to let you know that a new version of the Proposal on Award Policies and Procedures Guide was just posted this morning and is available on the NSF website. I'm going to be talking a bit about the effective date, as well as some of the more significant changes that are contained in NSF 24-1. Then I'm going to talk about generative artificial intelligence technology and NSF's merit review process, a bit about a new proposal evaluation system, or PES, at NSF, some outreach opportunities that many of you really count on and rely on to get important information about NSF, and finally some additional resources. Next slide, please. Well, the PAP guide, as I just mentioned, was released today. It will be effective for proposals submitted or due on or after May 20, 2024. This also impacts language and our funding opportunities, so we will be making changes to these documents as well to ensure that it reflects the correct version of the PAP guide. We will be talking about the rollout of the Federal Financial Disclosure Report. I know many of you are very interested in that, but that will be at the Foreign Influence session tomorrow. And there are some very important details and dates regarding access to that new system that we would like to make you aware of. Next slide, please. So let's go into these a summary of some of the more significant changes. Well, CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, we made a few changes in the 23-1 version of the PAP guide to implement CHIPS and Science, but this year we have done a whole lot more in 24-1. Foreign influence and malign foreign talent recruitment related policies will definitely be discussed tomorrow, as we're going to have an entire session related to this topic. So I hope to see a lot of you at tomorrow's session to hear our coverage on those topics. Mentoring plan. Mentoring plan requirements will change to expand our coverage to include postdoctoral scholars as well now as graduate student researchers. Currently, the mentoring plan only applies when there is funding for postdoctoral scholars. The plan will now be called the mentoring plan, and it will be provided as usual in the supplementary document section of research.gov. In no more than one page, the mentoring plan must describe the mentoring that will be provided to all postdoctoral scholars or graduate students supported by the project, regardless of whether they reside at the submitting organization, any subrecipient organization, or at any organization participating in a simultaneously submitted collaborative proposal. Again, separate plans are not required for postdoctoral scholars or graduate students. It remains one plan. The plan may, however, specify how different components of the mentoring plan will be enacted for the two types of researchers. This new requirement will be system enforced for proposals submitted or due on or after May 20th, 2024. An individual development plan requirement has been introduced for each NSF award that provides substantial support to postdoctoral scholars and graduate students. To meet this requirement, the PI or co-PI submitting the report is certifying that each individual that has received one person month or more during the annual reporting period have an individual development plan that is updated annually to map the educational goals, career exploration, and professional development of the individual. Changes are also being made to our project reporting system to implement these changes. A number of updates also have been made to implement the common forms for the biographical sketch and current and pending other support. More detailed information, as I mentioned in the last slide, will be included in the session tomorrow on foreign influence. Next slide, please. I really want to hone in on this issue, as it was one of the largest comment areas in the PAP guide that was issued for public comment last April. This requirement relates to seeking and obtaining tribal approval, tribal nation approval, for proposals that may impact tribal resources or interest. Again, this is a new requirement in the PAP guide. Proposals that may impact the resources or interests of a federally recognized American Indian or Alaska Native tribal nation will not be awarded by NSF without prior written approval from the officials designated by the relevant tribal nation. For purposes of this provision, references to resources or interests of a tribal nation are limited to resources or interests connected to tribal nation lands or those aspects of tribal life that are within the domain of a tribal nation, including but not limited to tribal languages and subsistence rights on tribal nation lands, as opposed to individual tribal nation members. So what do you have to do? So proposers seeking NSF funding for such proposals must, number one, they have to seek guidance from the potentially impacted tribal nation or nations regarding which activity or activities require review and prior approval from an authorized designee of the tribal nation, and based on the guidance received, submit a written request to the relevant tribal nation for approval to carry out the proposed activity that requires the tribal nation review and approval. Each tribal nation is sovereign and may have different policies and procedures to implement this new requirement. Examples of covered activities may include but not be limited to research or projects that involve tribal nation members and would invoke the tribal nation in any way, including but not limited to referencing a tribal nation, materials, public forums, or publications, carrying out studies or research on tribal nation reservations, territories, or other locations where tribal nations have legally protected rights to resources or to engage in activities, and using tribal controlled information or data in research. This is implemented in accordance with new tribal nation requirements that were issued to federal agencies. And so it's vitally important that you understand that this is required, a new requirement for all agencies. There will be a new checkbox on the cover sheet to indicate if there are potential impacts on tribal nations. In addition to the checkbox, proposers will be required to include at least one of the following as a supplementary document. One, a copy of the written request to the relevant tribe to carry out the activities that may require approval. Written confirmation that the review and approval is not required, and or a copy of the document providing the requisite approval. Just like human subjects and vertebrate animals, this is a just-in-time activity. You do not have to have the actual approval at the time the proposal is submitted. But I should note that proposals, again, as I've already mentioned, proposals that may impact the resources or interests of a federally recognized American Indian or tribal native nation will not be awarded without prior approval from the officials designated by the relevant tribe. We strongly recommend that faculty working in this space start this approval process early. Next slide, please. A few other changes of note. New proposal type for research opportunity supplemental funding requests for predominantly undergraduate institutions. The acronym we use for that is ROA/PUI. The requirement for this proposal type is not new, but we wanted to ensure that when it was incorporated into the PAP guide, that the language was standardized across NSF and streamlined wherever we could. Previously, these requirements were included as part of certain solicitations. Post-award addition of off-site or off-campus research. The new language in the PAP guide states that if a recipient rebudgets funding to support off-campus or off-site research and a plan was developed for the original proposal, then no additional documentation is necessary. However, if supplemental funding is requested to support off-campus or off-site research, and the original proposal did not include a plan, then the recipient must develop and maintain the plan in the organization's records. The final change I want to talk about is senior/key personnel terminology update. The draft 2020, it's not draft anymore, the 2024 PAP guide also updates terminology related to senior/key person to read senior/key person. Sorry, I really messed that up. So we updated the terminology from senior personnel to read senior/key persons. This may seem like a small change. However, NSF is making this change for consistency with our other federal agency colleagues as we all implement the NSPM 33 requirements. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk a bit about use of generative artificial intelligence technology in the merit review process. Generative AI or GAI systems have great potential, as you all know, to support the U.S. National Science Foundation's mission to promote the progress of science. They could facilitate creativity and aid in the development of new scientific insights as well as streamline agency processes by enhancing productivity through the automation of routine tasks. While NSF will continue to support advances in this new technology, the agency has had to consider the potential risks posed by it. The agency cannot protect non-public information disclosed to third-party GAI from being recorded and shared. And to safeguard the integrity of the development and evaluation of proposals in the merit review process, this memo establishes guidelines for use by reviewers and proposers. So in December of 2023, NSF issued a notice to the research community about safeguarding the integrity and development and evaluation of proposals in the merit review process. This memo also established guidelines for the research community. What are those? Any information uploaded into generative AI tools by reviewers that is not behind NSF's firewall is considered to be entering the public domain. As a result, NSF can't preserve the confidentiality of that information, and the loss of control over that uploaded information can pose significant risks to researchers and their control over their ideas. If information from the merit review process is disclosed without authorization to entities external to the agency through generative AI or otherwise, NSF loses the ability to protect it from further release. For this reason, NSF reviewers are prohibited from uploading any content from proposals, review information, and related records to non-approved generative AI tools. Proposers are encouraged to indicate in the project description the extent to which, if any, generative AI technology was used and how it was used to develop their proposal. This aspect is not really new. Authors other than the PI and co-PI have long been required to be acknowledged. NSF is examining the use of AI in proposal preparation, and we first want to understand how it is used by the community to minimize administrative requirements and build in appropriate processes and resources for the merit review process. So we may publish further guidelines for use as needed. The PAP guide already addresses research misconduct, which includes fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in proposing or performing NSF-funded research, or in reporting research results funded by NSF. Generative AI tools may create these risks, and proposers and awardees are responsible for ensuring the integrity of their proposal and for reporting of research results. Next slide, please. A new proposal evaluation system. A new proposal evaluation system will replace the interactive panel system module in Fastlane in FY 2024. The new system improves the navigation, the user experience through use of modernized, intuitive, and easy to navigate interfaces and enhanced functionalities for the preparation and submission of reviews by panelists to support panel meetings and for real-time collaboration on panel summaries. I think those reviewers out there are going to really enjoy this experience. The IPS module in Fastlane will be decommissioned after the proposal evaluation system is released for use NSF-wide. Next slide, please. So some outreach activities that I think will be important for you to note. NSF will conduct a webinar on the changes to the PAP guide on March 12th. Go to the Policy Office outreach site to register to receive information about this and other upcoming outreach opportunities. The Spring 2024 Grants Conference will be held in person. Yay! This is the first time in a few years we've been able to do that. It will be in Philadelphia, June 3rd through 5th. Virtual attendance will also be an option. And again, as I mentioned, this will be the first time since November 2019 that we will hold this event in person. The Policy Office continues a webinar series to focus on single topics. The most recent covered eligibility for NSF funding opportunities. The Policy Office intends to conduct another webinar with a deeper dive on the common forms for the biographical sketch and current and pending other support in the near future. You can go to the Policy Outreach website for many other on-demand presentations and to sign up to be notified of upcoming events like the webinar series and future grants conferences. Just go to the website on the slide and click Get Notified to sign up. Next slide, please. Finally, on this last slide, there is a whole host of technology resources that are available to you. There are links to all of these on this slide, and I would encourage you to peruse these for a lot of additional, deeper information on NSF activities. Next slide, please. This is just a final slide with links to 24-1, the Policy Office website, 23-1, which you will continue to use until May 19th, 2024, as well as a number of other links. So that's it for the formal presentation. I thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. There are a couple of quick questions that I'd like us to get to if you have time.
Yes, ma'am.
You have time for a couple? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Here is one. Does the requirement to seek tribal nation approval if an institution of higher ed is located on historic tribal land, I think it means, does it apply if that institute of higher education is situated on historic tribal land?
I think because of the nature of this, we would still expect the box to be checked and for you to provide. Just because you're located does not necessarily mean you've gotten their approval. And that is what the executive order is trying to solve. These are sovereign nations, and we need to make sure that we have their approval. So great question.
I think it's a great question. I just want to follow up on that for a minute. And that is, if it is an institute of higher ed, is there a way to have a kind of MOU or something like that in place that would help that particular institution be able to address that question, which would come up with every single submission?
Yeah, I think that would be a wonderful suggestion. Again, each tribal nation, what we are learning from our outreach, and we're trying to do, just so you know, not just with the FDP and institutions of higher education, we're doing a lot of outreach to tribal nations. And what we're understanding is that they vary greatly in terms of even their understanding of NSF and who we are and what we do. So that's a great suggestion, Michelle. And I would encourage those institutions to pursue that kind of approach.
And just one last, I apologize for spending so much time on this issue, but I think it's such an important new regulation that's gone into place. Is this also applicable to tribal schools and colleges?
Yeah, yes, it is. Again, we wouldn't, there's not a lot of latitude here. Now, they may absolutely also be in a place with that tribe where the tribe can easily, bam, just sign it off at the time of proposal submission. NSF could then just walk away even at the proposal submission time, knowing this has been addressed and this isn't one we have to worry about. So thank you for those questions, Michelle.
Thank you. A couple of other quick ones, and then the rest we'll have to get to offline, and we'll make sure to save them and send them to you. So Robert Harrison asks, are there AI tools that NSF approved And how would they be any different in protecting proposal data and ideas?
Well, because these are ones, yes, the tools we are talking about that have been approved are behind our firewall. So those are the ones that folks use on a regular basis. So yes, we know, and you would go in and use those tools to do things, but they're behind our firewall, so things are then protected.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I'm going to ask from Carmen Schultz, the new mentoring plan requires career development plans. Graduate students are sometimes unsure about their career development plans. How would you envision that issue would be addressed?
Well, I certainly think that may be the case, but that idea could certainly be incorporated into whatever plan is developed. And that way it would still meet the requirements, but permit the PI or co-PI submitting the project report. And they have to certify that they've got one, it's being updated. So we are not giving you much more than the what has to be included, but certainly that could be built in to the actual individual development plan.
That makes sense. And then one final question. It's from a department user. Are CPS documents for key personnel and senior personnel required for a final report? At that point, CPS does not really matter to the reviewers because the reporting project has already ended. So we should not be required to submit CPS documents for a final report. This is a new requirement in the NSF guide, but there's not instructions on how to use a CPS in the annual final report.
Okay, so the requirement, just to baseline it, is that if you have new other support, not pending, new other support you've received, you must include it in each annual report. Now, the way we do things at NSF is the final report is simply the final annual report. So a program officer would still want to know that information to ensure that they have been able to assess if there are any impacts that they need to be aware of.
Thank you. I'm going to leave it there in the interest of time, but I really want to thank you because this has been a very interesting and important update. So we know we'll see more of you at this meeting.
Yes, you
so
will.
We look forward to that.
All right. Thanks so much.
So Calvin Scott will be next from AFOSR. I'm going to turn it over to Calvin.
All right. Good afternoon. Is my camera working? Is it up?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, you're good.
my computer is special at times. All right, so my name is Calvin Scott. I'm the Senior Procurement Analyst at the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. And today I'm going to be briefing on behalf of the AFOSR and the Space Force. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, and this is our agenda. We'll be talking about, AFOSR, our granting process, the research areas, improving competitiveness, and our opportunities. Okay, next slide. All right, this slide is an illustration. It shows the breakout of the technical directorates within the Air Force Research Lab. We're basically AFOSR is basically the basic research arm of the Air Force and Space Force currently. Let's go to the next slide. All right, and here you'll see our mission. And of course, our mission is to discover, shape, champion, and transition high-risk basic research to impact the future of the Air Force and Space Force. All right, we can go to the next slide. And this is a slide about how we work. We find research, we form the appropriate teams to ensure success. We fund it with the appropriate funds, and we forward it through our transition programs. A lot of the most common ones are the Sitter program, or through directly through the AFRL technical directorates. All right, let's get to the next slide. And this is our granting process, all the way from the proposal input at, through grants.gov to our program officers during their proposal review, doing cost and technical evaluations for proposals that are selected for award. We send it over to our scheduler, make sure we got the right money. Contracting does its final review, and then we award it. You guys perform, and we find at some point in time we finally make it to closeout. All right, next slide. Okay, and this is just a breakout of our the research areas that we have in our current BAA, and the BAA. The link to it is on the slide. I also encourage you guys to check grants.gov because we have a lot of announcements that regularly come out, and that new requirements that we're working on. So we have more information to come once we iron out some more details. Let's go to the next slide. All right, this is how we accomplish our mission. We again are we focus primarily on the basic research arm, and the diagram just kind of gives you a description of everything that kind of goes into the process, from the basic research to the transition of transition partnerships, and when we get more so into the contract realm. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, this is how to work with us. Okay, and I talked about grants.gov. That is our primary site that we use for our basic research proposal, or basic research announcements, either through a broad agency announcement, which has the opportunity for contracts, commercial grants, and standard traditional grants to universities. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so when you start with the Air Force, your initial interaction is going to be probably an email or a white paper submission to a program officer. This is going to save you time, as well as inform the program officer of this great idea that you're looking for us to support. I highly encourage you guys to initiate, before you prepare a proposal, because so much goes into the proposal process. I would recommend you finding out if the program officer is at least interested in it. However, if you would like to submit a proposal without checking with the program officer first, some of our solicitations allow for it. All right, let's go to the next slide. And again, this is more so, it's a continuance of the previous slide. Communicate with the program officers early and often. Of course, the program officers have a lot of people contacting them with great ideas. So be patient. But if you do, for whatever reason, you notice you reached out to a program officer and you haven't gotten a response back from them within I'd say a week or two, then I would email there should be a contracting POC on the agency announcement, and I'm not going to say email a direct email account because it varies depending on the announcement. But if you email the contracting personnel, we will work to get you a response. Because a lot of times it's just the program officers. We have spring reviews, or they're traveling to visit other universities. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, and these are some updates from a recent amendment to our current open BAA. We've currently removed the requirement to submit the lobbying form, because by signing the SL 424 and Block 17, the grantee is agreeing to comply with the Lobbying Disclosure Act, meaning that if the grant is above 100,000 and they have lobbying to disclose, that they'll disclose it. If by them signing, they're saying that they don't have any lobbying to disclose. And we're just saving a form that's commonly missed in our review process. And we updated we added the equipment vesting section to address some questions from a few universities and within our organization. So we've added a section which basically says that the equipment will vest with the grantee. There are, of course, circumstances where the equipment could the government could allow you to have like use of the equipment, but the government may want said equipment. But I imagine that will be few and far in between. Most of our grants with equipment invest with the university. All right, next slide. And on this slide, this is just these are several ways to connect with AFRL, the Air Force, and Space Force Connect, Tech Connect. And on the next slide, you'll see that it's more ways to connect with us. All right, and I believe the next slide is a question slide, and I am here for them.
I'm going through the questions, and I don't think we have a specific one for Air Force. I'm just checking. Oh, wait, here's one. Okay. One question is, we have been asked recently by DoD subs, including Air Force, who are competing subcontracts for our institution AOR to sign that our organization has validated the content of current and pending biosketch content, not just certify that it is accurate to the best of their knowledge. They state that it is required by their federal sponsor. Where is that requirement coming from? It appears to go beyond the NSPM 33 requirements of disclosure.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. So if you could email that question to aforsar.baa@us.af.mil, and that is on the first slide. It's under my name. It's the BAA email. Email that question to me, and I'll work with our policy team to figure out why that's happening and the appropriate response for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here's one more question. Is the intent of the equipment vesting for-profit subrecipients under an AFOSR grant to a IHE recipient that the for-profit subrecipient will still get title vested to them like the prime recipient? Was that clear? So I think they're saying if the prime gets equipment vested with them, is the intent that then the prime should allow the subrecipient to retain their equipment as well?
It depends.
I knew you were going to say that because
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. It really would depend.
Yeah,
Right?
I can't give a 100% yes or no answer on that, because even in updating that language, it was like we battled and our legal team was great on it, but we couldn't even come up with a definite, it's always going to be in this direction. So there are circumstances to where it could, then there are circumstances to where it could not. So I would have to say, I'd have to leave that to the grants officer who's working that particular action and the policy team who they're going to be leaning on. So for that kind of specific question, we'd have to kind of go in the weeds with it. And I don't think I have that much time.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. And then there was another question regarding the lobbying disclosure. Is it still required for subrecipients?
Well, we weren't requiring it for subrecipients because we're on the prime level. So I don't know that that was something that was happening within the Air Force.
Internally. Okay. Okay, I think that's all we have for you, Calvin. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Time. And next up, we have DHS, Michael Pellegrino. Michael? Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everyone. Michael Pellegrino. I'm at Homeland Security. I reside in the Office of Chief Financial Office. So our office is titled Financial Assistance Policy and Oversight. We are one of 12 divisions within the OCFO. So my boss, my supervisor, is the acting CFO, Ms. Stacy Marcotte. What I wanted to do today was just touch base on some of the internal stuff at DHS, talk about the 7 research programs we have. And then the thought here is that in future sessions, we can have a program officer come in and talk in detail about the programs. So our office is an oversight office. We're a little bit unique. Like I said, we reside in the OCFO. On the next slide, you can see some of the numbers for DHS. So what we have is we have multiple components, agencies, and this is some of the award data from 22 and 23. All right, so FEMA is the big one, of course. FEMA handles disasters, obviously not related to research, but just to give you some insight. So you can see it's roughly anywhere from 38 to $40 billion a year. And FEMA has about $5 billion in non-disaster programs. So each year we're around, we call it 38 billion, depending on the number of disasters. You can see we issued in fiscal year 23, we issued 14,000 rounding up awards to 3,332 recipients in 22, jumped up to 3,821. So we have the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction. We have CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, FEMA. ICE has one grant program. It's a tip line for human trafficking. Science and Technology, U.S. Science and Technology, U.S. Citizen Immigration Services, and the Coast Guard. So where you're going to find the research at is S&T and CWMD. FEMA has 2 programs that they identify as having research components, but frankly, I don't believe that would apply to this audience. All right. So these are the numbers themselves. On the next slide, if you're interested for DHS, these are the top 10 customers, top 10 award states, and the bottom 10 award states. If you're wondering, AS is America Samoa. MP is the, I always say it wrong, Maricopa, Northern Mariana Islands. I'm sorry, I said it right that time. And Florida in fiscal year 23 was the largest award recipient because of disasters. And there's a variety within them. So before we get to the next slide, though, talking about internal DHS. So what we have is last year we had 68 programs as part of the internal, the annual OMB updated process. We're now down to 65 programs. All right, FEMA has 50 of them, and then the other components have smaller. CISA has 4, CWMD has 4 programs. So our office is responsible for establishing policy and procedure for all the components, all the program officers and grants administration officers to follow, grants administration specialists to follow. So as 2 CFR, we have 2 CFR from that. We have what's called Financial Management Policy Manual. Chapter 6 has all the policy, basically comes off of 2 CFR uniform guidance. But what we did last year is we did an extensive update, redo of the policy. And then we had monthly training sessions with our financial assistance stakeholders internally. So the program officers, grants administration officers, to train them on what the policies were. All right, making sure when you're applying for awards, everything's copacetic, everything's done properly. Also internally, so for the non-FEMA components, you're using grant solutions. FEMA is developing a new solution called FEMA Go, FEMA Grant Outcomes. Full operating capability is expected this fiscal year. So if separate from this, if you're actually applying for a grant at FEMA, you'll go through FEMA Grant Outcomes. So on the research programs, on the slide we're on currently now for science and technology. So we identify 7 research programs. Right. So the 2 FEMA ones I mentioned are a little bit on the side, but science and technology has 3 programs. 97.061 is the Centers for Homeland Security. It's a consortium. It does research on, to educate the next generation of technical security, scientific challenges, personnel. It's last year in fiscal year 23, it was a $36 million award to 11 awardees. So the Scientific Leadership Awards is another program there. That's mainly designed for mathematical research for the minority serving institutions. So same thing here is training up students to have successful careers within Homeland, within, scientific leadership issues, cybersecurity issues, And then another one is 97.108 that S&T has. You can see here, it's a one that actually is for the first responder community, identifying gaps, chemical, biological, physical, all different elements regarding terrorism. Now at DHS, we have these three programs for science and technology, but the DHS, that's one of the things is we're so broad. We have cybersecurity, the Coast Guard has the recreational boating safety program. So whether you're aware or not, when people have boats and they register them, those registration fees go into the Department of Interior. That money is used for the boating safety. FEMA is around disaster preparedness, but we also have loans and flood insurance. So it's pretty diverse. So on the next slide, you will see what we have for CWMD, the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction. They also have three programs. They have two programs. The Homeland Security Research, Development, Testing, Evaluation. This one, in essence, it's just to support the nation's security, right? The infrastructure. Same thing around authorized chemical, biological, or nuclear warfare weapons, right? The agents that are out there. So in fiscal year 23, it was a $3.5 million were funded, 13 awards. So these programs for S&T and CWMD are also, they're multi-year programs. So we'll issue a NOFO, and then it's either a 5-year or some of these programs have 10-year NOFOs, meaning once you get the award, as long as everything is done in compliance with policy and procedure, you can then get a renewal with supplemental funding. And then the 97.130 is the Nuclear Forensics Expertise Development Program. Same thing there is developing experts to increase the awareness around the nuclear field. It pushes people along from, it gives money, push people along from an undergraduate to a postgraduate degree in the field. Okay. On the next slide is the two FEMA programs. So the State Homeland Security National Training Program, there's actually three components that make that up. There's the National Domestic Consortium and then the regular consortium. So it's a $95 million program, 13 awards, and money that goes out basically for national preparedness, which is FEMA's main mission. It's just, get everyone up to speed on the operation centers, train everyone. The last piece, this is an interesting program. It's 97.00044. There's multiple sub-programs under here, but it's the Assistance to Firefighters grant that actually is going to be posted this week. We just cleared this NOFO. NOFO comes in from FEMA. We review it for compliance and policy issues. So this one, they has a small research component just because of a lot of the data that's collected. But this is an interesting one for everyone, for if you're on like your local community email. This buys fire trucks, buys protective services. Last year, the community I live in got an email. We got a $1.5 million fire truck from FEMA for this grant. So this is just one for, in general awareness. $436 million, 2,350 awards last year. So you can see it's a big one for DHS, one of the bigger ones. The biggest one, which is called Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities. So they are the 7 programs. So next is my contact information. Either email me directly, or feel free to go through the FDP. But what we'll do in the next session, whoever wants to hear whatever program you want to hear about, we'll bring in the program office to get into the weeds. Any questions? Please let me know. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I don't think we have any, appreciate this time. It was very informative, a lot of programs, a lot of opportunities. I don't think we have any questions at this point, so we can move to NIH. Brian Sashurst.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Sashurst. I'm an Assistant Grants Compliance Officer in the Division of Grants Compliance and Oversight within the Office of Policy for Extramural Research Administration at NIH. And I'm glad to be here to provide an update. We get started on the next slide where we're going to discuss some budget updates. So as the slide says, in November, the appropriations continuing resolution was passed, and NIH issued a guide notice extending regarding government operations going through February 2nd. As most of you know, last week, the president signed an additional continuing resolution And so there should be a forthcoming CR-related guide notice about our budget continuing through March 8th. And then also the new executive salary levels have been issued. We can go on to the next slide, where we'll mention the policy updates, and we can breeze on past that one to move on and discuss SBIR, STTR. NIH has issued 2 recent notices regarding the SBIR and STTR programs through the Extension Act signed into law a couple of years ago. There have been a number of major changes to the SBIR and STTR programs, including increased minimum performance standards, disclosure requirements for foreign countries, a requirement that federal agencies establish due diligence programs regarding security risks for applicants, among other several things. One of the major pieces, which will also come up later in this presentation, is that there will be a requirement for disclosure of all funded and unfunded relationships with foreign countries for the owners and covered individuals. And there will be a required submission of required disclosures during our just-in-time process. A copy of that form is available on our website. And there's plenty more details on this in our in the guide notice that's been published and through our SBIR, STTR programs. So we'll move on to the next slide to talk about our policy guidance for subaward and consortium written agreements. In response to some audits that were conducted by the HHS Office of the Inspector General, as well as through the GAO, we've updated our grants policy statement to not make new policy, but clarify policy about foreign subrecipients providing access to copies of all notebooks, data, and documentation supporting research outcomes. And we expect our recipients to update existing subaward agreements to address that requirement. And we will not support any agreement that does not meet the minimum requirements that are outlined in the grants policy statement, specifically in section 15.2.1. On to the next slide about our simplified review framework. This is an exciting change that was released through a guide notice, and it will be effective for applications to NIH with due dates on or after January 25th of 2025. NIH reorganized our 5 regulatory criteria that have been used for peer review, which were significance, investigators, innovation, approach, and environment. Those were consolidated into 3 factors. 2 of those factors are going to receive numerical criterion scores, and 1 will be evaluated for sufficiency. And this will include factor 1 of the importance of the research, which will be scored 1 through 9. Factor 2 is rigor and feasibility, which will be scored 1 through 9. And then factor 3 is an expertise and resources, which will be either noted as appropriate or a need for additional expertise or resources would be necessary. And these changes came due to reframing these criteria to make sure our peer reviewers are focusing on the central questions about how important is the research, how rigorous and feasible are the methods, and whether the investigators and the institution have the expertise necessary to carry out the funded projects. And so, like I said, that will be moving live at the end of January of next year, and it will apply to most research project grant applications. So we can move on, I think 2 more slides to talk about some system process updates. First, we've been working really closely with NSF and other agency on the common forms for BioSketch and other support. These forms have been cleared by OSTP and OMB, and we are implementing these forms as a phased approach as part of our Forms I release. And so until these new common forms are fully adopted by NIH, we are requiring our applicants and recipients to use the current formats for applications for just-in-time and for research performance progress reports. And the electronic signatures as well as supporting documentation are required. And those applicants who do not follow the appropriate formats may cause NIH to withdraw applications from or delay consideration of funding. And there's plenty of information on our website about these new forms, which I think some other presenters today may have touched on. So we can move on and talk about just-in-time updates for SBIR and STTR. Kind of, as I mentioned earlier, there is the new foreign disclosure form for applications that are going to be requested at just-in-time for NIH SBIR STTR awards. And this form must be completed in its entirety. And there's some screenshots attached to this slide. And if anyone's having trouble with it, our ERA online help website is linked in the presentation and would be useful for you. Next slide, we have an update on our closeout reminder notifications. Recipients from NIH funding who haven't submitted their final closeout documents within 120 days at the end of the performance period become overdue on their final documentation. And up until now, NIH has been sending reminder emails at 10, 120, and 150 days after the project period end date. And from the notice that's linked in this slide, we are going to be sending additional reminder closeout emails, so adding a 90-day period one as an additional service to our recipients, just to make sure that folks are being reminded appropriately about forms being due. We can move on to the next slide. As a reminder, ERA Commons IDs must be entered in the credential field for all senior key personnel, as well as other significant contributors that are listed on the senior key person profile form. Right now, applicants will encounter a system warning if that field is left blank or is not valid. However, in advance of the applications due on or after January 25th of this year, we will be updating this validation from a warning to an error. And so now is a great opportunity for any applicants with NIH to check their Commons accounts to make sure that it is active well in advance of the due dates, so that you'll be able to continue with that application. And we can move ahead another 2 slides through our compliance updates. We're just one additional item, which is regarding the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse hosts all single audit reports that are required from state or local governments, as well as nonprofits, which does include hospitals and institutes of higher education. That website has been transitioned from the hosted by the US Census Bureau to be hosted by the General Services Administration. And so as this transition goes on, we just have a few updates. So first, all new single audit reports are going to be submitted to the new single audit website, which is just at fac.gov. And prior single audit reports can still be located on the old census website. And the fac.gov page has a timeline about how and when to submit reports. And then for those who search for single audit reports, they can do so on both of those websites until the GSA moves the old single audits into the new site. And then just a reminder, any for-profit or foreign organizations receiving NIH funding, their single audit reports would still go through the HHS Audit Resolution Division. And that's the end of this presentation. The next slide has a few different email addresses for some of our more common outreach. And I don't know if any questions have come in through Q&A or what my time is like, but you let me know.
We do have time for questions, and Brian, first of all, thank you for that excellent update. There was a question waiting for you before you even started. It was the first question that came in. So here goes. Can Brian speak to NOTOD 23-182 related to clinical trial networks that already submit data to data coordinating centers? That is the question.
I'm not sure that I have the ability to touch on that level of detail right now, but I would encourage you to go ahead and send an email, probably to the Division of Grants Policy, and we can make sure that we are in touch with you to provide an answer.
Perfect, thank you. Pamela Webb asks if you can say when the NIH guide notice around executive salary levels will be released.
I can't. I want to say that my slide at the beginning did say that the new executive salary levels have been issued and that a guide notice is forthcoming. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure exactly where in the process it is, but if it's forthcoming, I would hope that it would be in the near future.
Thank you. Katie Johnson is referring to NIH R15 changes where prior approval is now required for your first NCE. She comments that this is a significant increase in administrative burden for both the PI and university administrators. Can you discuss why this change was implemented so that we can help explain it to our PIs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have the details on that at my fingertips. But once again, if you send an email, we'd be happy to provide some additional information to help explain that to the PIs.
This is a question from an anonymous attendee. Is there any guidance on when NOTOD 24039 might be revised for the new fiscal year
The
20
salary cap.
salary cap? Yeah, as we
Yeah.
head into the February deadline season, it would be helpful to plan for which salary cap we should be using.
Yeah, like I said, the salary cap guide notice is forthcoming. I believe it's under review, and I'm sure that they're going to release it as soon as they're able.
Thank you. And I think this is an important question. To whom are the closeout reminder emails sent? Is it the PI, AOR, or someone else? We in the central office feel we're not always receiving the reminders.
That's a really good question. I would suspect it would be the AOR, but the systems policy branch, whose email address is linked there, they would probably be a little better situated. So I'd recommend reaching out to them, but I would presume it would be the AOR.
Thank you. And another question from anonymous attendee is there a timeline on when Form I will be released?
My recollection is, well, I'm not aware right now when it will be released. And if you send our systems policy branch an email, I'm sure they can provide additional resources.
Thank you. I'm just moving right through these questions. Jessica Moyes asks, can NIH send IR/PPR reminder emails? It's like an orals exam, so we're just going to keep coming at you.
Yeah. So on IR/PPR reminders, I can definitely take that note and bring it back to the folks that make those decisions.
Another anonymous attendee question. My institution, oh gosh, my screen just went crazy. My institution was notified that multi-year grant awards, R15, for example, would no longer be eligible for a second no-cost extension. Can you tell us if a guide notice will be released?
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty similar to the other question about multi-year funded. Unfortunately, I don't have those details at my fingertips, but if you send us an email, we can definitely provide more details.
And another question, what is the timeline for going live with the Common Forms? Will the Common Bio Sketch be first?
I don't know what the timeline is. Our systems policy branch would be a great resource to ask about those forms. I think that's similar to the Forms I release question that came in.
And this question is related. Will Science CV be required by NIH for BioSketch?
I think that's similar to the Forms I question, yeah.
Next question from Elizabeth Eason. How will SBIR STTR disclosure requirements be impacted by new Corporate Transparency Act that just went into effect on January 1st?
I'm not quite sure about that, but I will definitely make a note that that's a question being asked by the community for us to make sure we're addressing.
And we'll make sure you have all of these questions.
Thanks. You can see me writing it down.
Because I know it's like impossible to write them all down, but it is important that we make sure that you are aware. So yeah. This one says the NIH BioSketch is currently very different from the NSF one. Does this mean NIH is intending to get rid of contributions to science?
I'm not quite sure about what specifically is changing. My understanding is that we are planning to move to maintain the common forms, and so I think I would leave it at that. And any questions about the forms, you can send in to us, and we'd be happy to provide more details.
This is about foreign recipients. So foreign recipients who receive over $750K in HHS funding are required to submit audits to the NIH. For foreign subrecipients who meet the same thresholds, their audits are made accessible to PTEs who may want to access the same documents, or will the PTE have to request those from foreign subrecipients directly?
That's a very interesting
Yeah.
question. So generally, I mean, if a PTA, I assume means pass-through entity. So the requirements to follow policy would flow through the subrecipient down to who receives it. And so then that would bring them into the requirement to submit a single audit, even if they are a foreign or for-profit organization. I wouldn't know about the documents are being made accessible to pass-through entities, because each organization that has a single audit has their responsibility to provide it to whomever their cognizant agency is. So I'd assume a subrecipient meeting the threshold would be required to likely provide it to their pass-through, as well as to submit it in accordance with the grant's policy statement. But I would recommend reaching out to us through email so that we can provide a researched response instead of too off the cuff.
And this is another audit related question. Can you speak to how NIH is responding to the DHHS OIG report, which is referenced OEI-04-21-00160 regarding NIH single audit review?
Let's see. So I know from a different case that we did receive the audit report, which we review any findings and take action with them in accordance with the department. You know, I can't really speak to the breadth of it generally right now, but if there's a specific question that this person has, they can certainly reach out to the Division of Grants Compliance and Oversight, and we'll be in touch.
With that, I'm going to close us out because I know we're encroaching on the next session, but we'll send you the remainder of the questions, and we really, really appreciate all of the time that you have given us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So yeah, go ahead, Maria.
I can introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is from NIFA, and that is Susan Rice. Susan, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
Mhm.
So today I'm going to start out with a little general update on some agency stuff and then get into a little bit more of the details. I'm Susan Rice from the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. I reside in the Office of Grants and Financial Management, and I am the Policy and Oversight Division Director. So next slide, please. Okay, so as you may already know, and I think we provided this in our last update, Dr. Manjit Misra has been appointed the new NIFA director. He was sworn into a 6-year appointment back in May. Dr. Misra is a world-renowned scientist who comes from Iowa State University, where he served for more than 30 years as the director of the Seed Science Center. Throughout his long career, Dr. Misra has made transformational impact on food security through the application of engineering principles to seeds, the most vital and fundamental element of food security. In his first few months on the job and throughout the rest of the year, he's been focused on reviewing NIFA's strategic plan and the agency's vision for the future. Dr. Misra is already demonstrating strong leadership in building up the work we've already done to develop a strategy that will help NIFA to continue to grow and thrive as a leading federal agency in agricultural innovation. Next slide. So again, NIFA priorities are implementing the administration's priorities, supporting our partners in addressing critical needs, and developing federal efforts to advance agriculture-related scientists, leading the innovation in research, teaching, and extension, and partnering with our stakeholders to deliver comprehensive program leadership and meet goals outlined in the strategic plan. We are addressing the need, next slide. Addressing the needs of our partners through funding collaborative projects, listening through input sessions. Please always be checking our website for those sessions. It's vital to the success of both the agency and our stakeholders. We continue to enhance our portfolio of 4-H programs, and we have numerous groups that we are focusing on high quality customer service. Next slide, please. So the 2024 President's budget proposal includes 1.8 billion. Sorry, I've had a bit of a cold, so I'm a little having some problems here. 1.8 billion for NIFA discretionary programs. This would be 160 million or a 9% increase to our 2023 enacted levels. The allocation for capacity programs is 892 million, which is a 29 million or 3.5% above the 2023 enacted levels. The added funds reflect 20 million increase for the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, or FNEP, a 9 million increase for research at 1890 institutions, and a 4 million increase for extension programs at our 1890 institutions. For programs, the President's proposed budget includes increases for AFRI, which reflects increased investments focused on the Cancer Moonshot and education and workforce development, as well as the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education and the IR4 Minor Crop Pest Management Program. The FY 2024 President's budget was, as you know, submitted to Congress last spring, and we are following the process to see where our funding levels will land. Next slide, please. So we're continuing to strive to meet the stakeholder needs, and as you know, we had quite a upheaval over the relocation back in 2019. So now we are staffed at 363 full-time NIFA employees, and that is slightly more than what we were staffed right before our move to Kansas City. The goal is 390 employees, and while we're almost there, continue to check our vacancies on USA Jobs, and we hope to get that to the 390, fairly soon. We continue to improve NIFA processes, and we'll go over a little bit more of this and then over the next few slides. We have a grants modernization initiative going on right now. Again, we continue to expand and build on our schedule of program implementation from RFA to award announcement, which we call SPIRA. We're working on re-engineering the RFAs. We've made some advances to our reporting systems, and we also we've announced some external NIFA dashboards for use by the stakeholders. Next slide, please. Okay, mine didn't switch. So our NIFA Grants Modernization Initiative, we had some old systems, we're developing new ones, and they were at the end of their life cycle, one being CREAMS and the other EasyFed grants. Our goal is to get this system up and running and to improve the experience of both our internal and external stakeholders. We launched this last year. We have now completed phase 1, and we've selected the new system, the ERA system. Phase 2, we had scheduled numerous fit gap meetings. And at this point, I'm happy to say we are 50% completed on our phase 2 of the process. Phase 3 is when we will begin to conduct pilots on different programs within NIFA and release the system. Next slide, please. We've talked about this several times in the FDP update, and it is our schedule of program implementation from RFA to award announcement, and we call it SPIRA. We piloted back in 2020. It gives NIFA the ability to offer transparency to our the life cycle of our awards, and to also be proactive in the management of these awards. This is a collaborative effort within NIFA internally with all NIFA staff, and it helps us to develop annual program schedules, which in turn we can become more consistent with these schedules year after year with our stakeholders. The external calendar for our request for applications is on our website, and there is a link on the slide. And we were very happy for our FY 2024 calendar. We were able to release that in the summer of FY 2023. That gives us, I think that's the first time we've been able to release the calendar pretty much in advance of the beginning of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So here I've listed just a few of our requests for applications that we have open right now. We currently have 28 competitive funding opportunities open for our stakeholders. Some of those are listed here, as you see. The AFRI Foundation or Applied Science Program funding opportunity is available. Another one of interest might be the Small Business Innovation Phase 2 application is now open. Please continue to check our website for additional current and postings coming up. And also check our website. We do a lot of public-facing webinars that pertain to these different opportunities and other subjects of interest. So check it out. We have a lot of opportunities open and a lot of opportunities coming up. Next slide, please. We continue to work on our RFA template and key. We told you a little bit about this in the last FDP update. We're hoping that we will have an interim release of our new RFA template, which you'll see in our request for applications. And we'll be piloting that in March of 2024. This will be a continued process as we move into the new systems. So you will begin to see things a little more streamlined with how ERA arranges the RFA and then how NIFA puts that out. Next slide, please. So in June, we were able to introduce 2 new public-facing data dashboards, which are available on our website. These dashboards give you unprecedented access to NIFA's high-level data on ag research funding investments and the ability to track your grant applications. On the funding dashboard, you can now pull information on funding investments by research program and grant type, congressional district, recipient, and other focused searches. It will also provide information related to requirements, waivers, and amount of match funding provided by recipient type and award. Users can also explore a funding map to find NIFA funding obligations by states as well. The second new dashboard is the NIFA application status dashboard. This application will allow you to quickly check on the status of your application using your grants.gov tracking number to better gauge when you can expect award notifications. We certainly hope these process improvements are improving the NIFA grants experience and making things easier for you. Next slide, please. So we are in the process of soliciting feedback and suggestions from external stakeholders on our next policy guide update. In the second part of this slide, the policy guide feedback invitation is available on our website and is open until February 2nd. We have already done internal feedback and have done some of those updates to the policy guide. And we anticipate that after we get the external feedback updated and of course go through our entire review and approval process, that there will be an updated policy guide issue March or April of this year, 2024. Next slide. Currently, the federal-wide research and agency-specific research terms and conditions are in the process of being updated. They've pretty much made it through our clearance process, and we anticipate release late January here over the next week or two, week and a half, or early February 2024. Most of those updates are some of our reporting updates and some national policy updates. Additionally, our small business innovation research and STTR terms or conditions are undergoing updates right now. We did issue some updates earlier in the beginning of last year. Of course, with all the new disclosure requirements, et cetera, those terms and conditions have gone through a review process, and I believe are with our general counsel at this time, and we anticipate being able to release those in March 2024. Other terms and conditions will also be receiving updates, and we will keep you abreast of those changes. Next slide, please. Of course, everybody is highly waiting, or our stakeholders and NIFA waiting for the release of the Farm Bill. As you know, President Biden signed an extension back in November 16th. It extends the Farm Bill until September 30th, 2024. We're continuing to provide technical support to the subcommittees, and I believe they are still taking any comments or feedback, and that address, email address, is listed here on this slide. The mandatory funded programs received this extension, so we are still moving forward with those, and we do look forward to the bill when we do get it, hopefully this year. Next slide, please. So we are all together here on a mission. I believe the next slide is the question slide. Then we have a code here. You can sign up for our NIFA update. Next slide, our general non-discrimination policy statement. So sorry, that was a little rough, but hopefully we all got through it together, and I guess I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Susan. You did a great job. That's a lot of information, and good luck with the Farm Bill. I know how challenging and hard that can be. We have one question for you, and that's from Jerry Cohen. And he had asked, are there any updates on matching funds requirements of some programs? And he was especially interested in SCRI, which is SCRI, and that stands for Specialty Crop Research Initiative. So do you have any updates on matching funds requirements?
I don't have any specific updates on that. At this point in time, because we're under a CR, we will be following what was written in the 2023 appropriations, which waived that requirement. So we'll be moving forward in that direction and waiting for the 2024 appropriations bill.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your question, Jerry. So we have a long a comment or question. It's commentary and a question from Chris Karsten. And I'll read the whole thing. And basically, this is providing some advice, I think, to probably for all the federal agencies that are listening, and it's an important question. So with regard to additional federal agencies moving to ERA Commons, love this in concept, but our recent experience with the NOAA transition is that there has been a lot of disconnect with regard to account setup management. For example, many of our users with existing accounts now have separate profile only entries, which is a problem, and content proposal / award activity transition. Can there be some kind of agency FDP coordinated discussion about roles and account management in the ERA Commons portal as NIFA proceeds with their transition? So this is kind of more of a, an opportunity for future discussion versus an answer, but
yeah,
I just wanted to share this important feedback.
No, that is great feedback, and that's certainly something that hopefully we can all get together and have a broader discussion on.
Sounds great. Thank you. I am looking and I don't see any other questions for you, Susan. So once again, thank you so much and our very, very best. We appreciate your presentation. I'll now introduce the next speaker. That is from NASA, and we have Mary Sladek and Christiana Diallo.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christiane Diallo, a senior program analyst with the NASA Procurement and Grants Policy Division. Today, I'll be sharing some grants policy updates as well as current and funding and outreach opportunities from our mission directorates. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mary Sladek, to cover program-related updates. Next slide, please. So listed on this slide is our contact information. Should you have any questions following this meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. Next slide. The first update we have here is a recent change to our office name as the result of the grants policy function transitioning from NASA OCFO's office to the Office of Procurement. The name changed from the Procurement Management and Policy Division to the Procurement and Grants Policy Division to incorporate the word grant within the division name. The change has no impact on the current organizational structure or the roles and responsibilities of current staff. Moving on is an update regarding our outreach event, Ask NASA. You were awarded a NASA grant, now what? This event was part of NASA Equity Action Plan, which was held virtually on October 11th. And provided recipients with post-award insights and best practices on how to effectively manage awards and also ensure compliance with grants policies and regulations. The recording of that training is now available on our YouTube playlist, and that playlist also features additional grants-related trainings and presentation. Next slide, please. As my colleagues alluded to their presentation, there has been collaboration between OSTP, NSF, and NIH to develop the common biosketch form and disclosure forms for research funding agencies per the NSPM 33 memo. Following OSTP clearance, NASA will include a new biosketch and current and pending support policy within our grant and cooperative agreement manual. The policy will also address the use of required facilities and equipment, malign foreign recruitment programs, and consequences for disclosure violations. There will also be a new certs and reps and terms and conditions that require recipients to update their current and pending support information post-award. Next slide, please. Okay, so at the last FDP, we shared that the federal cash transaction module in PMS will be decommissioned effective December 17th. And as the result of this change, NASA has transitioned from the FCTR to FFR format. So effective December 17th, the recipients will have view-only access for historical FCTRs, and no modification to historical submissions will be accepted within PMS. So if your entity has a delinquent FCTR or a modification to a historical FCTR, please send those to the NASA Shared Services Center Financial Reports email address that is referenced here. And recently we released a Grant Information Circular 2360B. That circular rescinds 2306A and 2306. The GIC also modifies NASA financial reporting requirements from quarterly to semi-annual. Following this policy change, the first report will be due at the end of April 2024, which will cover the period of October 1 through March 31, 2024. And the second period will be due at the end of October, covering the period of April 1 through September 30th. And any recipients with the final FFR reports that is due at the end of March 31st or earlier than that can submit those reports to the awards assigned grant officer at the NSSC closeout team using the email address that is referenced here as well. Next slide. As a reminder, NASA's revised conflict of interest disclosure policy became effective on December 1st. The policy is now consistent with those of other federal research agencies. It outlines requirements for grants and cooperative agreement recipients, COI policy and disclosure requirements. It describes actions that NASA will take when conflict of interest is disclosed to the agency, and also provides a new terms and conditions for all new and amended awards that are processed on or after December 1st. Next slide, please. The last policy update that I have here is in regards to the NASA's draft 2024 Equity Action Plan. The plan was submitted to OMB last month, and this was in response to Executive Order 14091, which is to further advance racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. The 2024 plan expands on the 2022 plan, also incorporating feedback that we received from our external stakeholders into new actions and goals for 5 strategic areas, including grants and cooperative agreements. Within that plan, NASA has identified 4 actions to enhance grants and cooperative agreements, advance opportunities, access, and representation to underserved communities. The first action is to participate in various targeted community engagement and outreach events for the underserved communities. The second is to provide training and education to grant applicants and recipients on required policies when administering NASA's grants and cooperative agreements awards. The third action is to expand dual anonymous peer review for grant proposals, and that is being led by the Science Mission Directorate. And the last action is to award funding for the Bridge program. And in case you're not familiar, the Bridge program facilitates partnerships between under-resourced institutions and NASA researchers, enabling these institutions to become well-positioned to submit proposals to NASA. After this plan is approved by OMB, it will be available on NASA Mission Equity webpage, and the link for that page is provided here for your reference. I will now turn it over to Mary for program-related updates.
Thank you, Christiane. Next chart, please. So I am NASA's program representative to the FDP, and I'm really happy to be here. Back in May, I was telling you that we were getting ready in the Science Mission Directorate to release a request for information regarding improving the usability of research opportunities in space and earth sciences, or ROSES, which is a NASA research announcement, or NRA. And just briefly, ROSES is about 100 plus NOFOs collected in one place. It includes funding. There are 6 funding divisions in science. 5 of them are science divisions, and one of them is science engagement and partnerships. We released the RFI in late October, and we were set to close it this week when we discovered we really haven't received too much feedback. So we're hoping that FTP members will be responsive when we extend the due date by 30 days. We have made submitting comments much easier. There's no need to register to submit comments. We are using the NASA box system at this URL here, and we are looking for all sorts of respondents. We invite proposers of all levels of experience, including those that have never applied to NASA before, sponsored research offices, and anyone really who assists in the preparation of proposals. We want your comments. Any significant changes to structure and content of the ROSES NOFOs attributable to this RFI will not occur before ROSES 2025, and we are having ROSES 2024 released in February. The RFI's long-term objective is to identify and reduce barriers to proposing relevant research to one of SMD's research programs. The structure and content of the current ROSES and 2024 will not be affected. Next chart, please. So being on the subject of research opportunities in space and earth sciences, ROSES, the next 2 charts I'm talking about are about SMD's inclusion plan requirement town hall meeting that is scheduled for February 20th. NASA is a mission agency. Our newest strategic plan calls out 5 core values that you can see on this chart: safety, integrity, inclusion, teamwork, and excellence. These core values mandate individual and organizational behavior across the agency at all levels. SMD defines inclusion as the full participation, belonging, and contribution of organizations and individuals. This virtual event will discuss a new requirement for evaluation and inclusion a new requirement for inclusion plans and for the evaluation of these inclusion plans in forthcoming in ROSES 24. ROSES piloted the addition of inclusion plan requirements for some NOFOs, and that will continue. Not all NOFOs are going to have an inclusion plan requirement. Inclusion plans are designed, 1, to raise awareness of barriers to creating and sustaining positive, inclusive work environments. And you can see that is perhaps even tied to NASA's safety goal. And to get proposers actively thinking about ways to foster inclusive practices for their research and mission teams. Next chart, please. Now, I have been seeing in the chat that folks are wondering why we don't give the charts earlier or before this meeting. Well, those of us have to get our charts approved before we can send them to the FDP, and that doesn't really leave a whole lot of time to get them out to you before the actual session. So I will be sending a short email to the faculty FDP list with the relevant URLs that I am citing in the ROSES portion of this presentation. So on this chart, this is the connection details for the February 20th town hall. There's no need to pre-register. You will be admitted on a first come, first served basis. We are also taking short questions as of today and before, during, and this will be during the town hall at the IO URL you see here. This will be conducted via WebEx. You can join by audio only. We hope that you will do so, and we hope that you will take the opportunity to give us more substantial feedback using the RFI I mentioned before. Next chart, please. So Rose's largest dedicated to graduate student research opportunity, and you heard Gene Feldman talking about mentor plans, is the Future Investigators for Earth and Space Science and Technology, or FINEST. Proposals are due February 6th. Now, since this is our largest solicitation for graduate students, we do need a lot of reviewers. So on this chart, you will find that there are hyperlinks to signing up to be a FINEST reviewer. You can either be a panelist or you can be a non-panelist and review individually. If you are selected to be a panelist, there will be some compensation. Now, the landing page for all of the Science Mission Directorate review opportunities is available on our website, science.nasa.gov/researchers/volunteer-review-panels. You can get all of the SMD open opportunities there, including the hyperlinks. Next chart, please. Finally, from SMD, we are conducting a study of 50 years of investment in hosting postdocs at NASA facilities. We seek input from former National Research Council postdoctoral associates who were hosted by NASA. We are looking for current and former NASA postdoc program fellows. We are looking for the NRC NPP applicants who didn't make it to NASA, and anyone at all. The review is seeking input, I quote Paul Hertz, from anyone with an opinion on the NASA postdocs. This chart provides the names and emails for submitting your comments via email. There is also a link to a Google form for a structured response. And for general information, please visit the science.nasa.gov website and look up postdocs, NASA postdocs program. Next chart, over to Christiane.
Thank you, Mary. The next few slides include funding opportunities and workshop with some of our mission directorates. The first is within the Space Operations Mission Directorate, there is a call for proposals for their 2024 Human Exploration Research Program. There are currently 4 appendices with proposals that are due on January 30th. SOMD also plans to release an additional appendix sometimes within the May 2024 timeframe. So please be on the lookout for that. Next is a workshop for the Human Research Program Investigator that is scheduled from February 13th through February 16th in Galveston, Texas. And at this workshop, participants will be able to hear scientists and principal investigators share progress and results of research on safe, productive, and efficient human spaceflight. Next slide, please. For our Office of STEM Engagement, the EPSCoR solicitation was released on January 10th and closes on April 15th of 2024. The funding is available for up to 5 awards of $150,000 each for eligible jurisdictions that are listed on this slide. All proposals for this solicitations must be electronically submitted in Inspires, which is NASA's solicitation and proposal review and evaluation system. Next slide. In our office, our Space Technology Mission Directorate has several upcoming opportunities. The first is the Small Business Technology Transfer Research with proposals that are due on March 11th. Next is the NASA Big Challenge, Big Idea Challenge, where NASA is seeking student proposals for inflatable systems for lunar operations. The due date for those proposals is February 1st. Following that is the Universal Payload Interface Challenge, seeking the development of an interface system that can be integrated diverse space payloads into flight vehicles. Those who are interested must first register no later than February 1st and submit their application no later than February 22nd. Additional information on how to register and submit applications is available through the link that is provided here. Next slide, please. Another STMD opportunity is the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts Program, which funds aerospace concepts for future mission. Proposals for this opportunity is due in early February. Next is the early career faculties solicitation that is designed to sponsor research in specific high priority areas of interest within the space program. Solicitation is scheduled to release in early February. And following that is the Space Technology Research Institute, designed to research the advances in technology with the potential impact on future aerospace capabilities. And solicitations for this is scheduled to be released in the May or June timeframe. And if you need additional information on current and upcoming STMD opportunities, please use the link that is provided here. Next slide, please. The next is the last and final slide. Is a list of links and resources that is available for your reference. I'm not going to go through the list just in the interest of time, but I just want to highlight the Grants and Cooperative Agreement YouTube playlist that was established last year and features grants-related trainings and presentations. That concludes my presentation for today, so just want to thank you all for your time. I lost chat, so I'm not able to see any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Just for the sake of time, and we have 2 more speakers left, we will just relay the questions. We have 2 questions and we'll forward those to you, Mary and Christiana. So just a message about the time. I know we're scheduled to run until 3, but for the courtesy of our speakers, we are hoping that we can just leave the session open a little bit longer, probably to about 3:15, and I know that the speakers would appreciate that. So thank you very much, and I turn it over now to EPA for Jennifer Robbins.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Robbins with EPA's Office of Research and Development. Next slide, please. We're just going to go through some of our current and upcoming funding opportunities, terms and conditions updates, and other research resources EPA has for applicants. Next slide, please. The only RFA we currently have open is for our 21st annual People, Prosperity, and the Planet Awards. These are awards to student teams to develop sustainable innovations. For additional information about upcoming opportunities, please visit our Research Grants website, and I have some of those on the next slide, please. Oh, I got it out of order. The Grants Office also offers process webinars for applicants. They offered a bunch last fall, the fall 2023. Some include indirect cost rates, fair share objectives, the overall competition process, and then a guided tour through EPA grant terms and conditions for fiscal year 2024. And here are some links where you can find more information. And if you subscribe to the listserv, you'll get alerts when there's new webinars or other information. Next slide, please. Here are the upcoming research opportunities. We have an enhanced aquifer recharge and sole source aquifer grant program, the resilience of coastal ecosystems, sustainable green chemistry, and air quality information to address community identified air pollution concerns. Next slide, please. There have been updates to EPA's terms and conditions. The National Davis-Bacon term and condition was updated. The fair share objectives on utilization of disadvantaged business enterprises was updated. Build America, Buy America was also updated to incorporate updated guidance from OMB. All applicants and recipients received notice of these terms and condition changes via a recipient applicant information notice, and also got alerts via the listserv. If you have any questions, please email EPA_grants_info@epa.gov. Next slide, please. Again, plug in the grants listserv. Here's a link to sign up and you'll find out about the latest info on EPA grants. Next slide, please. And this is this research grants specific listserv where you'll find out information on upcoming research. specific RFAs. Next slide. And here's my contact information in case you have any questions. That's it. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. We really appreciate it. The next speaker is Jennifer Riggle from HRSA, and she is the first time, this is the first time HRSA will be presenting a federal update. And I just wanted to mention that Michelle Bowles was instrumental in making this presentation happen. As you know, Michelle is our lead federal representative to the FDP. She's been meeting with other federal agencies and looking to connect them with FDP. So thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate HRSA's participation.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here today. My name is Jennifer Riggle. I'm the Director of the Division of Grants Policy and Planning. I'm at Health Resources Service Administration, which is part of the Department of Health and Human Services. I've been there since '99, originally worked in a couple of program offices, as well as the Office of Operation. And then I've been the director for 10 years in this position, which is part of the Office of Federal Assistance Management. And we provide leadership in the administration, assurances of financial integrity of HRSA's grant programs, cooperative agreements, scholarships, and loan programs. I'm going to provide you an overview of HRSA as an agency today and highlight some of our work to simplify the grant process. Next slide. HRSA's, we're dedicated to providing equitable healthcare to the nation's highest need communities. We serve communities that are people that are geographically isolated in rural and frontier areas, economically or medically vulnerable. Our programs support people with low income, people with HIV, pregnant people, children, parents, rural communities, transplant patients, in other communities, as well as supporting the health workforce, health system, and those facilities within those systems. We support more than 90 programs, and that's the assistance listing number. So depending on how you define program, we certainly have a lot of other special initiatives and NOFOs more than 90. In FY23, we awarded more than $13.8 billion in financial assistance to more than 3,000 recipients, including faith-based communities, colleges, universities, hospitals of all sizes, states, local tribal governments, and private entities. The next slide. Our largest program is the Health Center program. It provides access to medical, dental, behavioral health, and other healthcare services to needy communities. We have special initiatives within that program for people experiencing homelessness, agricultural workers, and residents of public housing. We also manage the Ryan White CARES Act with the HIV/AIDS Bureau within HRSA. And we have the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, which serves rural communities with many different grant programs there. Next slide. Within rural health, that office is actually the HHS Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, but it's housed in HRSA because of our grant making capabilities. We serve a lot of different provider types in rural areas, from small rural hospitals, critical access hospitals, rural health clinics to we have state offices of rural health and other entities there that help find unique ways to provide access to care for rural Americans. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. We also train health providers. We have a Bureau of Health Workforce, which has multiple programs, scholarships, both grants, cooperative agreements, scholarships, and loan repayment programs. This is where the National Health Service Corps is located, which awards individuals funding to serve in communities of need. Next slide. We have a Maternal Child Health Bureau, which serves over 3.7 million infants every year. It has multiple programs. Specifically, we have a block grant program, the Healthy Start program, and maternal child, infant, early childhood home visiting program. Next slide. As far as financial assistance management, as I said, we have 90 different assistant listing numbers. Last year, FY '23, we awarded almost 37,000 grant and cooperative agreement awards, almost 16,000 scholarship and loan awards. 89 NOFOs, which is right about where we are each year, even though our planned work is maybe around 70 NOFOs. And then we get our budget and we learn a bit more about new initiatives, and we end up around 90. 82 objective reviews, which we're always looking for reviewers. You can go to our website if you're interested in becoming a grant reviewer for us. There's a form that you could fill out. Tell us about yourself and we'll be in contact. As they said, it's $3.8 billion, 2.5 of which are earmarks, and more than 3,800 recipients. We have at our annual Healthy Grants workshop, we've been doing this workshop probably about 6 years now. And it's going to be kicking off again in May of this year, and it goes through the end of summer for HRSA recipients. Next slide. We are a part of a pilot with HHS for simpler NOFOs. We're looking for ways to kind of have a document that's easier to understand, a readability level that's a little lower than what it's been in the past, to get at that plain language mandate, to have this language, to have it presented to you in a way that has use of charts and other visual aids, just to make the process of applying for a HRSA grant award easier to understand if you're eligible, what the requirements are, and reducing those barriers where we find them. So we're combing through our NOFOs. We have 9 right now that are of 100 HHS NOFOs in this project. We've issued 1 so far. You can find out more on the website on this slide. But in general, we're very excited about this initiative and are taking what kind of looked like a very dry governmental document and making it much more interesting, I think, and easier for someone to take a look at and consider. So we're trying to reach those communities of needs, of small providers, folks that may not have grant writers, and find a way to get them in the door so they can compete and hopefully make sure we get the most impact for our funding. And next slide. I'm wrapping it up just on time here. There's my website, the website for HRSA, other ways to engage us. My information's on the front, the first slide.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. I am like shocked that we made it to 3 o'clock. I definitely thought we can't do this in this amount of time. We really appreciate HRSA's participation, as we do appreciate the participation of all the federal agencies. The information is so important that you present to the FDP community and the research community, and we really, really appreciate it. I don't know if Michelle or Alex had any parting words. I guess we all just say thank you, and we'll see you at the
Exactly. We'll see you at, I think, 3:30 is the
at 3:30.
So,
All right.
you so much.
Thank you, everybody. All right.
Excellent.
Bye-bye. Thank you.